All right, today I'm going to be doing a Q&A. If you want to ask me questions so you can get them answered, put them on my Instagram. I'll pop it up on screen here. Follow me there. On every Monday, I post a Q&A on my stories, so then you can just ask any questions. I usually answer them right away on the day, but then you can get them into a video like this where I do more long form answers. So make sure to put them there. That way you get your questions answered. Before we get started on the questions, I just wanted to say that I am an online fitness coach, and so if you would like a pre-made plan in terms of nutrition or training, you can message me and get signed up for those. Otherwise, I do one-on-one online coaching, which includes training, nutrition, supplementation, sleep, and hydration advice. On top of that, there will be weekly check-ins to make sure you're reaching your goals, and the plan adapts as you adapt. So if you're hitting your goals and we need to change things, that's part of the plan included. That goes month by month or in 3-month bouts. That way we're making sure that you're getting enough time in order to reach your goals and actually see results. So if you're interested in either of those options, let me know by either messaging me or going to my website. Starting off with the first question here, protein intake for a 200-pound male. If you're trying to put on muscle, your protein intake is going to want to be somewhere between 0.8 and 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. And so for you, that's going to look like roughly, if you're a 200-pound male, around 200 grams of protein per day. Now, a lot of people are going to have the follow-up question, like, does this need to be from complete protein sources? Does this need to be from only natural foods, whatever else? Not all of it should be from complete protein sources, or I guess I should say doesn't have to be, but you want to get as much as you can from complete sources, as that's going to be the most beneficial in terms of, your gains. And on top of that, whole natural foods are going to be the most beneficial because you're getting your other important things like your micronutrients in those foods comparative to something like a supplement. Now, this does not take away from supplements' efficacy. I think that protein powders are great, protein bars are great, especially if you're on the move or you don't have access to being able to make a full meal. Those are great options in order to still hit your protein goal comparative to not being able to without those. And so don't shy away from them just because you might think that they're not as beneficial. They can be great in the right circumstances. Next question here is, what is a preferred protein powder? So for me, if I'm looking at protein powders, what I want to do is make sure that I'm getting a good calorie to protein ratio. So roughly somewhere between 120 and 150 calories, and then somewhere between 25-ish grams of protein is what you want to look for per serving. So each scoop should roughly be around that. Now, if we're talking about between like a whey, a casein blend, or an isolate, it really doesn't matter to me that much. But if there's a certain flavor that I find that I really like in one of those, that's kind of what matters to me. Me personally, I like chocolate or cookies and cream, stuff like that. Those are generally the ones that I go for. However, I know that there's a lot of now fruit flavored ones on the market that are pretty good that I haven't really tried in specific, but I have heard. If I'm making recipes with them, so I'm doing something like my yogurt bowls or my ice creams, I generally prefer to go for more of a lighter flavor, and then I'll add in the additives to that to maybe add to it. So maybe I'll do like, the Rise marshmallow, but then with it I'll put the 70 calorie brownies, like the Fiber One ones, and then it's really good. And then for protein shakes, I generally like to do a flavor that kind of stands alone by itself better, so it has more flavor to it. I can leave a couple recommendations on screen or in the comments as to which ones that I really like, but I'm not sponsored or I don't work with any company, and so these recommendations would just be ones that I find that taste good and not that I'm making money off of them or anything. Next question here is, how do you deal with struggles / hitting a wall in the gym? With this one, I actually have a full YouTube video covering workout plateaus, and so if you want to check out that video, I cover extensively how to deal with that. However, if we're talking about the mental component and not the actual physical component, that's a little bit more person specific. However, I think that it's still an important conversation to have. For me, that really looks like assessing why I'm not able to get myself there. So if I'm waking up in the morning and I work out in the mornings and I'm dreading going to the gym, I need to kind of think about why that is. Is it because I don't like my workout routine? Is it because I am stressed about other things and I want to get those done, so I don't want to work out because I'm, distracted by the fact that I have other things going on? Is it because I'm overtired or whatever else? And then finding that root cause usually helps me in order to be able to address that. And then generally speaking, within a couple days of figuring that out, then I'm back to being my normal self and liking going to the gym. So if you're looking for the physical reasons as to push through, go check out that video. But for the mental stuff, it really just comes down to figuring out the root cause as to why you're having issues with it, and then figuring out how to address those in order to push through. The next question here is thoughts on magnesium. I think that magnesium is a great supplement, as it's hard to get a lot of magnesium into your diet, and so supplementation is usually great in order to make up for that. I also find that specifically for things like sleep enhancement, magnesium can be really great. I actually suggested my grandma to start using magnesium for her sleep, and she went from averaging around 5 hours of sleep per night to around 6 or 7, which for her is pretty good, as she struggled with sleep for a really long time, especially with waking up in the middle of the night and not getting a consistent bout of sleep. And magnesium has helped her to kind of get around that, as well as be able to have more wakefulness during the day, as she would wake up and not always feel rested. So this was helpful for her. And if it's something that you find beneficial, that's awesome. I feel like a lot of people get benefit from it. And so for the sleep specific reasons, I think it's a great supplement. The next question here is good apps for counting calories and how to start without getting overwhelmed. For me, the only app that I've ever used for counting calories is MyFitnessPal, and I find it to be really great. I've used it for probably 6+ years now, and I have no issues with it. I guess that's a lie. The one issue that I have is I don't like that you can't scan barcodes now without being premium. I think that's really stupid that they blocked that behind a paywall, as that's a lot easier for people to use compared to typing in the brand names of everything. So that is a little frustrating, and so if that's enough to deter you, I get that you would have to type it in. However, I find that once you get the things that you usually eat typed in, it's not usually too bad to just type in like the first word of it, and then it pops up in your search history. So that's, I guess, a workaround to make it more convenient. And then the second part of the question is how to start without getting overwhelmed. I think that it really just comes down to, one, maybe starting with not doing every single meal per day. So maybe you only start with your breakfast, and then you track that. And then you add in your lunch, and then you track that. And then you add in your dinner. So you're slowly, consistently adding a little bit more over time. Another thing that you can do is with MyFitnessPal, they have a thing where if you go to the recipes, you can make recipes. And so if you're someone who generally eats the same things roughly every single day, or you have a rotation of maybe 6 or 7 meals, you can just put in all 6 or 7 meals into the recipes tab. And so whenever you have that food, you just click on breakfast, let's say, and then you just put in that breakfast that you usually have. That makes it so it's essentially just 3 clicks. You click breakfast, my recipes, and then you click the recipe, instead of having to do every single ingredient every single time. That can be beneficial in terms of getting into the adherence of tracking, because it's not as much work to put in every single ingredient every single time. And then the final question here is going to be, when losing weight, can you target specific areas of fat with specific workouts? No, you cannot. So this would be known as spot fat reduction. And it's this idea that if I were to do crunches, I would be able to lose weight around my core, or if I were to do bicep curls, I would lose weight on my arms. That's not how fat works. We can't just target certain areas to lose fat from those areas. Our body already has a predetermined set point as to where it wants to lose from first, and then second, and then third, or where it wants to pull from more so as you lose weight. So we're going to pull from everywhere roughly evenly, but maybe some areas that we hold a little bit more fat, those might be less likely to go earlier on. So for me in specific, I hold a little bit more weight in my back, and especially my low back. And so as I lose weight, my legs will lean out a lot sooner than my back will. This doesn't mean that I'm doing, a bunch of squats and I'm not doing a bunch of back work, and so my back isn't getting, less lean or more lean. It's the fact that my body just tends to pull from different areas. And so as I get leaner and as I lose more weight, it will eventually go from that area. So let's say your area is your stomach, and you are struggling to lose weight in your stomach, but you can see you're losing weight in other areas. You just have to keep losing weight. It will eventually pull from every single area. It just might take more time in some areas compared to others. So just stay consistent with your routine, and you'll eventually get there. All right, so that's the questions that I'm answering for this Q&A section. I've got plenty more to cover, so in the next one I'll cover some more. Again, if you would like your questions answered in a long form video like this, make sure to put them on my Instagram, or just ask them in the comments down below on this YouTube video, and I'll be sure to add them to the list so that you can get them answered. Peace, have a good one, like, subscribe.